Despite high mortgage rates, inflation, and renewed fears of a broader recession, the Kansas City real estate market isn't budging one bit. In this video, we're breaking down 3 different topics, starting with mortgage rates, the Kansas City housing shortage, and where a shocking number of new homes hitting the market, where those are coming from. And then number 3, why cash is king, and it's making one of the biggest comebacks that we've seen in nearly a decade. Now, before we get to part number 1, which is all about mortgage rates, here are a few political cartoons I found that really set the stage for what we're about to discuss. So you've got the big US recession, the fears of a default, and then of course inflation. And then here we are, the really small US taxpayer funding all of it. Here's another one. I think this is also pretty funny to see, right? We've got all those banks that collapsed over the last year. A lot of them were regional and small banks, and it led to a lot of consolidation. You've got the Fed, which is trying to fight inflation, and in the process is really just hurting all of the banks. And then finally, I think this is probably the best one when it comes to housing prices specifically, and one of the challenges with mortgage rates, which you've got inflation, which is just too fast to catch, and then you've got wages, which have been stagnant for a very long time now, just unable to catch up with those rising prices, making it very, very unaffordable for a lot of people across the country to purchase a home, let alone go to the grocery store every single week. Moving on to part number 1, which is mortgage rates. Here's housingwire.com. This is where I really like to get all of my info regarding mortgage rates. If you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see this graph right here. I think it makes it really easy to kind of track the changes over time. In the last 2 weeks, the last time we did a market update, mortgage rates were a little over 7.5%, which is very, very high, especially over the last 10, 15, 20 years or so. But they've dropped down a little bit to around 7.25%, just under that. And of course, that's for a 30-year conventional loan. If you're looking at a jumbo loan, which is larger in size than a conventional, you're around 7.14%. Of course, FHA, which has seen a lot of popularity recently, you've got a lower rate of 6.86%. So if you are currently a first-time home buyer, if you're looking at a home below the $500,000 mark or just a little bit above $500,000, then you would qualify for that here in the Kansas City area. And of course, you've also got a 15-year mortgage, which doesn't have savings that are all that great. They're still a little bit better, but it's about 6.94%. Now, one thing that you'll see if you look at headlines online, all of the news, you'll see quite a few articles that look kind of like this that say, will mortgage rates fall after the June Fed meeting? Here's what experts think. And just a quick spoiler alert, none of the experts think that mortgage rates are going to drop anytime soon. Now, if we scroll down, here's one opinion that I think was pretty good. It said, I highly doubt that we're going to get a rate cut just yet. I really believe we're headed in the right direction, just very slowly. Inflation still rose 0.3% in April, which was better than expected, but it's still up 3.4% for the year, and unemployment remains the same. So the Fed is looking for it to worsen in order to lower rates. Now, that's the problem right there, is 3.4% for the year so far, and we're only halfway into the year. What the Federal Reserve wants to see is inflation at about 2% for the entire year. So 3.4% in about 6 months, and we're really not even to the 6-month mark until July of this year. That is not very good. And that's why it's taking longer and longer and longer. And that timeline for decreasing interest rates keeps getting pushed farther and farther back. Here's another person who says, I think the probability of a June rate cut is pretty low. Just take a look at the minutes from the Fed's most recent policy meeting. Appears to be a pretty clear consensus to continue chasing that 2% inflation target, even if it takes longer than initially thought. And it goes on to say that rate hikes aren't off the table either in the event that persistent rates don't appear to have the same impact as they once did. So this is an interesting take, because they're not just saying, hey, they're likely not going to cut rates. They're saying, hey, there's a chance that they might increase rates, which of course would likely drive mortgage rates up as well. Now, before we move on to part number 2, which is about the housing shortage right here in Kansas City, if this is your first time seeing these videos, then welcome to the channel. My name's Nick Massa. I'm a licensed real estate agent here in Kansas and Missouri. We make these videos because I know the market's volatile. I know there are a lot of people that are wondering, should I buy a home now? Should I wait? What's happening with the market? What about mortgage rates? And if those are the types of videos that you'd like to see, we do these twice a month. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see them in the future. And of course, if you're on the fence, if you'd like to talk through a situation, get some added input, or potentially get a really good deal when you go to buy or sell a home in Kansas City, all my contact information is right down below this video. So don't hesitate to reach out, give me a phone call, call, text message, email. Love to hear from you, and I'm never too busy to take your call, so go ahead and reach out if you have any questions. We're going to move on to the second part of the video. It's all about the housing shortage right here in Kansas City and where most new homes hitting the market, exactly where they're coming from. One of the major problems with those higher mortgage rates is a lot of people have interest rates between about 2, 3, and 4%, which is historically low. So if they were to buy a home right now, they're facing double the monthly mortgage payment for the same house. And of course, increased prices on top of that. So we've got a very large shortage of homes in the Kansas City area. Although if you watch the market update from 2 weeks ago, you would have seen that we're looking at a little marginal improvement this year compared to last year. However, according to this article from Redfin, it says that 1/3 of houses for sale are newly built, which is just shy of the record high. And of course, you can see that that number is around 33.4%. And this graph shows it very, very nicely. Of course, you've got the aftermath of 2008, everything starts to kind of rebound. And of course, we are at one of the highest levels of new construction homes listed on the market than we've seen in a very long time. And this is potentially one of the only reasons why home prices are not increasing faster than they otherwise would, right? We've got a little bit more supply. And although new homes and pre-existing homes, although those are completely separate markets, any little bit of supply does help and ultimately reduces how quickly home prices are able to skyrocket given how much demand there is for homes in Kansas City right now. Now, this article goes on to say that the supply of existing homes for sale has dropped because of what we just discussed. It says that many would-be sellers are opting to hang on to their low rate instead of moving up and taking a new one. It also goes on to say, and this is one of the major problems for new construction, if you do look at buying a new construction home and you're looking for something that's either move-in ready or a month or two away from being complete, you'll notice that there aren't quite as many as you would have seen just a year ago. In fact, this is becoming a widespread challenge because, as this article says, at the same time, builders have eased up slightly on housing starts, meaning they're building less homes because of high mortgage rates and dampened demand. So they're kind of reacting to this. The major problem is down the road. Even once mortgage rates improve, well, it takes about 12 months to build a home, or at least 10 months to build a home here in Kansas City. So by the time mortgage rates improve and there's more demand to purchase a home in Kansas City, we're going to be met with quite a mismatch between supply and demand because it'll take a whole year for those new homes, once mortgage rates decrease, to actually be built and for somebody to be able to move into them. Now, one observation before we move on to the final part of the video is that if you're on a tight timeline and you're looking for a new construction home, I know that I said there aren't a ton of them available, and that's true for the most part, but we've been able to find quite a few for other clients in similar situations. So if that's what you're facing and you gotta find a brand new home and that's what you're looking for, you've got a tight timeline, make sure to reach out. We'd be happy to help you. Oftentimes you'll see in new home communities around the Kansas City area, there might be some that are just not listed online, meaning they don't show up in Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, any of the home search sites, but the builder would certainly entertain an offer. So we can absolutely help you with that. Make sure to reach out. It's also a good idea if you do have a longer timeline building a home right now, you're creating your very own inventory. For the most part, you get to kind of control that mortgage rate a little bit easier. Hopefully we'll see those mortgage rates come down by at least a year from now, and that's about how long it would take to build a home here. So the ideal scenario is you get to choose the lot, choose the floor plan on top of it, customize everything, and lock your mortgage rate in later once they've already dropped. Now, moving on to the third part of the video, this is all about how people are paying for homes given how expensive mortgage rates are. And according to this article, which is also from Redfin, it says that 1/3 of US home buyers are paying in cash, which is the highest share in nearly a decade. And that seems to be the number of the day, is 33.4. That's exactly what we saw in the previous article, which was all about new construction listings hitting the market. So it just seems to be a popular one today. So it goes on to say that elevated mortgage rates are deterring home buyers who take out mortgages. We already know that. They say that it might also deter all cash buyers because they've decided that their money is better spent on investments that benefit from those high rates, like treasury bonds, for example, which if you look, they're anywhere between 4 and 5%, which is a really good return for a safe asset like a bond. It goes on to say that a lack of homes for sale is prompting competition in some metro areas. Kansas City is certainly one of those. It says that motivating buyers to make all cash offers to win homes is a result of that competition. And it goes on to say that the typical US home buyer's down payment was about $52,000 in April, which is down 18% from a year earlier. Again, a lot more money is having to be allocated to go to that monthly mortgage rate because they've almost doubled over the last couple of years. It also says that a lot of home buyers are going to those FHA loans that we talked about in the first part of the video. Roughly 1 in 6 US mortgage home sales used an FHA loan in the month of April, which is very, very high. Now, that's not all. We've got one more article. This one is also kind of along the same lines. It's the flip side, right? You've got a lot of cash buyers in the market, but what about the people who are using a mortgage despite these higher mortgage rates? Well, this one says that Gen Zers and young millennials took out 40% of US mortgages in 2023. A large part of what we're seeing is baby boomers who have cash assets that have appreciated in value. A lot of the times they have homes that they're selling in order to purchase the next one. And that's why they're able to pay cash. The same thing is not often true for Gen Z and young millennials. It says that the lion's share of mortgages went to young people last year. And of course, you can see the breakdown right here. You can see that age bracket 35. And then of course it drops down in 44. And of course drops down, decade by decade. The older you get, the less likely you are to take out a mortgage, especially with these very high mortgage rates. It goes on to say that the median age of first-time US home buyers is 35 years old. People tend to be in their late 20s or 30s when they buy their first home because that's when home ownership becomes financially feasible and desirable, and that younger buyers tend to be less phased than older generations by those mortgage rates, right? Late 90s, we saw mortgage rates very, very high, like 14, 15, even as high as nearly 20%. But this article is saying that they're not locked in by a low mortgage rate right now because, again, they're about to buy their first home, they're currently renting, and they weren't in the market 3 years ago when when 2 to 3% mortgage rates were really normalized. So they don't have that ultra low point of comparison. The final thing that it says is that more than 1/3 of Gen Zers and millennials who plan to buy a home soon expect to receive a cash gift from family to help fund that down payment. So there you have it. If you are in the market to buy a home in the Kansas City area, you might be competing with a cash buyer. You might be competing with a first-time home buyer who might have some cash from their parents that they can throw into the deal. So this is one of the hardest times to actually buy a home in Kansas City. But none of that matters if you can sidestep a large portion of that competition. And in the previous market update we did, I show you exactly how to do that. So if you enjoyed this video, let me know by hitting that like button below. And then of course, go watch the last market update we did, which was about the month of May, but I also show you some data and some numbers that might change how much competition you're facing and how good of a deal you can get on your new home. So click right here and I'll see you on the other side.